31 in 1 Corinthians 12. And God has placed in the church, first of all, apostles, second prophets, third teachers, then miracles, then gifts of healing, of helping, of guidance, of and of different kinds of tongues. Are all apostles? Are all prophets? Are all teachers? Do all work in miracles? Do all have gifts of healing? Do all speak in tongues? Do all interpret? Now eagerly desire the greater gifts, yet I will show you the most excellent way. This is a rhetorical question when he's saying, hey, are all apostles? Are all prophets? And he continues on with these questions. It's a resounding no. The point that he's making, he's saying, guys, not everybody is going to be everything. You're not all going to have the same gift. This reminds us that not one gift is meant for everybody, and not one person is meant to have all the gifts. These are rhetorical questions with an obvious answer. Right? After he just got done talking about many parts and one body, it wouldn't make sense that he would go on to say, hey, we should all have everything. Right? So the point that he's making here, he's giving a rhetorical question, and the answer is no. No, we're not going to all be apostles. No, we're not going to all be prophets. We're not going to all be teachers. We're not going to all do all these things, right? We're not going to each have all of these gifts. So not one person have everything, not one gift for everyone. Which means, again, you're important and you shouldn't focus on why I'm not doing this. Or maybe that's not the gift God's granted you. Focus on what he has granted you and what he wants you to do, because you are perfectly placed. And we see this idea of greater gifts. And again, unlike our culture, right? Our natural inclination, when people hear this, especially when they read the word, they think of the most quote-unquote supernatural gifts. That's like their natural response. Well, it must mean like the crazy ones, right? And or it must be the ones that get the most attention, the most important. But that's not what he's talking about here. Because again, he's talking to a church that is extremely gifted, but using them all for themselves. And I like the way the New Living Translation puts it. It says the most helpful gifts. Because Paul, as you continue to read on, he's talking about how these gifts are meant to build up the church. They're not meant for oneself. They're meant to build up the church. So he's not talking about the most crazy supernatural gifts, but he's talking about the gifts that are most beneficial and most helpful to the church. So our goal isn't always to be the most important, because that's not what Paul's talking about. He's talking to a culture that honored being important and thinking they were great because they were doing these things and they were doing things for themselves. So we have to understand when he's communicating here, he's telling them to desire the greater gifts, and those are the gifts that are most beneficial for the church, not the most extravagant, so to speak. And then he finishes on and he says, and yet I will show you the most excellent way. So what is the most excellent way? Well, that we're going to discuss next week. And we're going to talk about what the most excellent way is. What I wanted to focus on today is a couple of different things. There's different gifts, but all given by the same Spirit. No one part or gift should feel less or more important than the other. We want to be mindful to honor the parts in the background. We also need to be in sync and not divided. We need to be for each other, not against each other. It's important to do your part well because it affects the whole body. And every believer is part of the body. Every believer is part of the body and is important. So I need you to remember today is you are important. You are loved by God. If you are a believer in Jesus, he has gifted you. He has placed you perfectly. So this week, and always, of course, just remember how important you are. And if you're like, you know what, I don't know what my gifting is, well, ask God to show that to you. Show you what it is. But have him speak to your heart. Have him really just work in you. Remind you that you're important. Get rid of your insecurity, because your identity is in Jesus. And he wants you to use his gift to point to him. Let us pray. Father God, I just want to thank you so much for the opportunity to be up here and to speak your truth. God, I just ask that as it speaks not only to them but to myself, that everyone here who is listening has their hearts opened, their minds were open. That the enemy was will try and continue to try to distract them, to make them feel low or to puff them up too much. But God, let them come back to your word that reminds us that we're all important, that you've gifted us, you've placed us perfectly. And if we trust who you are, we have to know and we have to believe it. Help us to remember that our gifts are not meant for ourselves, but they're meant for others, to serve others, to point to Jesus, to glorify you, Lord. So God, I just ask that we walk out of here today, not just feeling better for a moment, but God, being just affected by your love and by who you are, the fact that you've chosen to use us, that you choose to have us be a part of your functioning body that gets to tell the world about Jesus. Remind us that we're important every day. Let this truth sit into our hearts, absorb into our minds. Let it be real. Let it not just be something that we feel for a moment. Let us not have an emotional churn, but let us have a real transformation by your word, by your spirit, Lord. So God, I just ask that your will be done. And I say this all in the most high, the most powerful, the most holy name. That is the name of Jesus. Amen.